So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome along to this Broadcom Lunch and Learn on sustainability driven by efficiency. This is a pre-recorded session, so I'll play the video back in a moment. We have got one, possibly two of the speakers on the call. So if you do have any questions, can we pop them in the chat window and I'll manage those. So from the sponsors Broadcom, we've got Dave Helsley, Michael Keel, Mark Warren and Kevin Ronan have spent some time to get on a call and record this session for us. So I'm just going to go and share my screen and then I'll play you the video. Just 1 second.
So, hello everybody. Thank you all for coming along to this UK GSE Lunch and Learn session entitled Sustainability Driven by Efficiency. My name is Kevin Ronan. I'm a mainframe business specialist with Broadcom, and I've been working in the IT industry for over 36 years now, almost entirely, but not exclusively in the mainframe space. I work mainly in the UK and Ireland and certain countries in Europe, but also in North and South America and Asia Pac. So my account coverage is fairly broad. And what's interesting is we get a lot of the same messages from all of our customers around the globe. So that's me. Let me introduce the rest of the panel. So JD, can I start with you, please?
Yes, sir, Kevin. Thank you. JD Bagnell. I'm an offering manager in the mainframe space with Broadcom. Been in IT since 1995, not necessarily all in the mainframe space. I was doing some different things in the graphic arts industry from a technology perspective prior to this, but mainframe for the last 13 years and enjoying every minute of it.
Very good. Thank you, JD. Mark, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name's Mark Warren. I'm an offering manager also with Broadcom. I've been in the mainframe space for about 40 years. I've been with Broadcom for about 33 years.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. And last but not least, Dave, over to you.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Kevin. My name is David Helsley, and I'm a distinguished engineer, and my specialty is really in our AI ops area. I've been in the mainframe for almost 40 years myself. So I've done a little bit of everything from soup to nuts, COBOL programming, all the way down into the operating system programming. So thanks for having me.
Thank you all, gentlemen. So today I have the pleasure of acting as moderator on this session. And I must admit that up until about 3 months ago, when one of my colleagues volunteered me for this role, I knew very little about sustainability, or indeed IT sustainability. But since then, my research has found a couple of really interesting things. So first of all, sustainability is a very top boardroom issue. 51% of CEOs say that it's one of their biggest challenges over the next 2 to 3 years. 85% of companies have sustainability strategy, but unfortunately only about 35% are acting upon it. Now, different governments, different organizations, different individuals all have slightly different definitions of what sustainability is all about, but all have a common underlying theme. And our panel will talk about that over the next 25 or 30 minutes. So in this session, we're going to discuss how the mainframe platform contributes to reducing carbon footprint when compared to other platforms, and can help all of you and your organizations achieve some of your IT sustainability goals in terms of, the mainframe being an energy efficient IT infrastructure with products and services that last much longer than the competition, in terms of platforms that require less repair or maintenance actions. So we'll talk about all of that. And our panel will suggest some best practices for moving ahead. Now, when I first started looking at the topic, there were three immediate questions that came to mind. One, what is IT sustainability? Two, what does sustainability have to do with the mainframe? And three, what does it have to do with me? Now, who better to help answer some of those questions than our panel here today? JD.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that. Yeah, sustainability. Like Kevin said, a lot of us have heard the buzzword throughout the industry. A lot of people have different definitions of what sustainability is. But as he mentioned, most organizations have sustainability goals. It is either things that have been driven by expectations of their customer base, by their own volition of how they want to interact with the environment, or how they want to lead the future or how they want to lead the future for their people that come after them. A lot of this started with the UN, the United Nations, really trying to define and create these sustainability goals, hopefully to really identify by 2030, that this a renewable generation is going to be key for that. So we have different things that have been identified. The EU, of course, has present defined future generation needs that they want to use. We have directives and plans specifically defined by different companies. So there's not one governing feature that does everything for all over the world. So there is some level of interpretation as we get into that. The EU, of course, is very focused. They're looking at specific sustainability. The UK, as we talk about, people think that they're behind the market on sustainability, but in reality, they were one of the first ones to take a step towards developing those specific goals for their country and people that were doing business there. So, the key thing is that, sustainability is great for moving forward, but, we still have to maintain us doing our jobs while trying to obtain whatever those efficiencies are that we have around our development goals. So a lot of that is driving where we want to be, in the future. We know we have a declining IT market of talent. So we need to be able to continue to ensure our customers are 100% moving the business forward, but also taking into account these different regulations and things that we need to fulfill.
Very good.
And if I could weigh in here, I wanted to talk about, IT is fairly obvious, contributes to carbon emissions. You look around you and technology is everywhere and it's got to be plugged in. It's consuming resources. There was an article in Patterns magazine back in September of 2021 where they calculated that IT contributes to about 2 to 4% of the global greenhouse gases. I think about when I first came onto the work scene, fresh out of college, there weren't PCs on everybody's workstation. We shared CRT tubes that we could log on to the mainframe. Then over time, these PCs, they're everywhere. And now they're also in the data centers. And so we do have quite a footprint of greenhouse gases that we can manage and help make sure is under control.
Very good.
Yeah, so let's keep in mind, David, that the IT greenhouse emissions are really coming from the data center, based around the cooling requirements, space, and again, the power consumption. And you brought up a good point. For example, direct energy consumption of IT servers, the terminals, the networks, and all the other information communication is increasing by about 9% each year, according to the 2019 report by the Shift Project, which is a Paris-based carbon transition think tank. And then you stop and think about it, then we have the United Nations requirements around number 9, 17, 17.8 to build a resilient infrastructure.
but it's very, dependent on the area of the world that you're actually doing business in.
Excellent. So turning it ever so slightly, what are the actual business risks associated with not delivering on IT sustainability goals?
Yeah, I'd like to take that one, Kevin. The reality is that we're very tied to digital. We just are very reliant on it. And that means that we need to have resilience in our businesses, and we need to be prepared for, times when maybe the capacity starts to run out. So, there might be spikes when we need to prepare and be ready for outages, and we need to have business continuity plans where we might be able to move our operations from one data center to another because the power might not be there in that primary site. So the tech sector really needs to provide an infrastructure for the future with these kinds of resiliency issues in mind.
Yeah, Dave, and I have to agree with you 100% in the fact that again the mainframe's consuming all this power, with the mainframe and so forth. But again, the system resources, the IT footprint, again, it just continues to grow. If we're not reducing that, we've got to look at the bigger picture. Cost is another point. Paper and consumption. We need to look at less printing and more online viewing. And then again, the workforce sustainability, we need to simplify that. We need to, it's not the skills that we had in the past are not there. So we still have to continue to look at all the United Nations and all of their requirements around sustainability. And if we're not participating with that, then like you said, we're likely not to have the power, not to have the resources, and then suffer outages because of that.
And I think you just kind of reiterate what both Dave and Mark have mentioned is, neutrality of the carbon usage. That's a key element. That's the key buzzword that you'll see on all of the news organizations around the world. But, there is a focus of ensuring that we, only use what we consume, and ensuring that we don't provide that negative number associated with that. Continued look at reuse and repurposing of whether it's personnel, whether it's software code, whatever is going to make things be able to support and make things more efficient is going to be key. Sustainability of the workforce. We know that in the mainframe. We have several different programs with Broadcom around supporting that and ensuring our customers are whole going into the future, around whether it's a vitality program or it's just making sure that as customers get or as users get to that end of their decision to go into retirement, that they have a workforce that can support their legacy as they lead into that next phase of the business specific.
And what about things like the physical space or system power consumption, which is obviously a really, really hot topic right now, and has become even hotter in the last number of months. What value does the mainframe platform bring in meeting these specific sustainability development goals?
Yeah, so let me take on that one just for a little bit, Kevin, because we can start with the kilowatt hours, right? If you look at what IBM's doing with the new Z platforms that have upgraded, they estimate that by upgrading from the Z13s and 14s that about 62 million kilowatt hours and will emit 43,000 less CO2 per year. So, we're working in that space. And when we look at physical space, the Z platform itself requires about 75% less floor space than compared to the x86 servers running the same throughput and workloads. So again, the power itself is going to be reduced by about 50% when we look at what it's doing versus an x86 configuration. So when we look at it overall, the mainframe's trying to reduce the the footprint as well as the consumption over a period of time.
Yeah, and I think if you look at, the development goals that customers are defining, it really lends itself great for in a mainframe environment, specifically looking for products to last and be able to support and run much into the future from an operational perspective. We've got mainframe systems that some of them have been running for decades, literally, at a 99.9% uptime, and so how do we make those environments more efficient? It was key things there. How do we take advantage of other operating systems that are easily integrated with the mainframe, like Linux and things like that, Linux on Z, and then really automation. The mainframe has been key in automation and usage of automation just due to the number and the speed of transactions running through the environment. The ability to even take that to the next step where we get into more of I don't want to say artificial intelligence, but more of an intelligent management of the automation and really capturing that legacy information from people that have been working on the mainframe and bring it more to an intelligent output that they can make a quicker decision than having to do a deep dive analysis.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what about moving sort of beyond that whole consumption thing? What about the workforce? What are your views, Dave?
Yeah, the value of the mainframe and the workforce is really coming to a critical crossroads. We're facing some workforce challenges in the mainframe. You just can't go walking down the street and find a Z guy. They're not everywhere, right? It's a special talent or special training that has gone into developing these people. And this kind of makes the platform vulnerable, and that's why we're seeing so many more modern workloads come to the platform. IBM is trying to cater to that, and we're trying to embrace that as well. And we're starting to see containers arriving on the platform. For example, JD was mentioning Z Linux, which is running great on IFLs. And ZCX is another version of Linux which runs under ZOS natively on zip engines. So we have a lot of challenges that we're facing, and containers are really starting to evolve as a technique or an approach that we can leverage that might help us with the skills gap.
Well, I've got to say that from my very limited research, it seems to me as if most organizations are not actually collecting data on the required metrics in and around sustainability. And in order to measure improvement over time, you first need to develop a baseline and then measure the improvement over time against that particular baseline. Now, I guess if we were in a live audience, I would ask for a show of hands around a couple of questions. So let me just invite those who have tuned in to think about a couple of things. The first thing is, how many of you people tuning in, the companies you work for, have published guidelines on sustainability? I guess that would be my first question. Second question is, how many of you actually have measurements in place? And then thirdly, as this is a mainframe focused group, are you doing anything specific in the mainframe space? So I think it's something worth thinking about, and maybe taking those questions back to your own organizations to figure out where you yourselves are going with all of this. So yeah. Just bringing it back to my thoughts on sustainability, but typically, sustainability, we talk about sustainability and it's very much focused on hardware, on the kilowatts burned, and obviously that's really, really important. But clearly there is a software story to be told. And it seems to me, and I've been in the mainframe space for a long time, that we need to run our mainframe environments even more efficiently than ever before. And we need to be even more vocal about just how sustainable the platform is. We also need to move from voluntary reporting, which our panelists have talked about, to a more formal approach to how we report on these business needs.
I mean, I think we can add to that too is the need to continue to modernize. Yes, we've had environments that have been running for years, but a lot of them are on the edge of making sure they have the newest and they're up to date. They're on the maintenance to ensure that they are running the most efficient, because there are new elements, new automation, new things that can be delivered to them software wise that really drives that. Specifically, as we get into a hybrid environment with the cloud, mainframe being part of that hybrid environment, ensuring that the efficiency between the two environments is as efficient as possible. Because we know that the apps that are on mainframe, a lot of them are been around for a long time, but their business value, dollar or monetarily increase the business, and so they're not going to go away. But they need to be made. They need to make sure that they can manage those as part of the overall customer experience, but also the efficiency of the environment.
Absolutely. Thanks, JD. So we've been talking fairly broadly so far, but let's move from broadly to Broadcom. Let's talk about what Broadcom, or more specifically, the mainframe software division within Broadcom, is doing to help all of you to deliver on your sustainability goals in the mainframe space. Now, our panel has touched on quite a few areas so far, consumption, containerization, automation and machine learning, succession, and workforce. So Mark, can you start by giving us some more insights on the topic of consumption?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Yes. So at Broadcom, what we've been really focused on is conserving systems as well as the power and physical space resources, right? In the storage space today at Broadcom, we've introduced a new solution referred to as CA1 Flexible Storage. With the new offering, it's going to enable you to move data anywhere. So you can store your data in the cloud, on-prem, it's not going to matter, which is going to save you with consumption, space, and hardware costs. You can save roughly 90% of the cost versus on-prem if you go the cloud year over year. But not only have we done that, we've also taken a look and said, if we encrypt and compress these files, now we can save an additional 75% on the actual file sizes itself. So again, you're going to be able to save on your space, your footprint, your disk, all of it. And we're reducing the CPU consumption at about 25% for each file that's being created. So overall, we're looking at not just CPU, we're looking at space, power, all of it, and how we can save over a period of time. And these are all available in CA1 Flexible Storage today.
Dave, you had some good insights in the area of containerization. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure, Kevin. We've got quite a lot of experience working with containers, and for those who are listening to this, they might not have that same experience. A container is a way to bundle your software in a way where it's immutable, it can't change, so you can distribute it to somebody and they can install it with minimal interaction, and it runs like it ran in the factory. And this is great. From a development point of view, we're coding microservices. We're writing our applications organized in an architecture way where they do one thing and they do one thing really well. It makes them great for testing. You can, separate the concerns and architect it in such a way that it's just very super easy to test, and you can come up with testing pipelines. Jenkins is a technology a lot of people use. And then we can, again, for deployment, it's just easy. There isn't a lot of port configuring or certificates that need to be developed, and all that type of workflow can be very easily handled in a containerized world. Now, you might want to look at your applications and figure out where they ought to be running. We are a mainframe shop at Broadcom in the mainframe software division. But there might be times when the x86 platform is the right place to run it. But you really want to look at your data gravity. If you've got a couple of terabytes of data in a DB2 table, it doesn't make a lot of sense to run an x86 application and moving that data around. You also might have latency requirements where having the data up on the mainframe and the applications up on the mainframe just cuts down on the delay talking between different pieces of your application. You also might have some high availability, and you might have some redundancy requirements that would leverage the Z space. And then also the Z, you can run 100% busy. Those engines, they don't mind context switching, but on an x86 platform, you can really only go to about 30% busy. And this is what I'm being told by my customers. This one customer that we're talking to was doing server consolidations of x86s onto the Z platform. And then depending on the workload, they were either getting 5-to-1 consolidation x86 cores to either zip or IFLs. And in some cases, they were getting 10-to-1 reductions in the number of servers and cores needed.
Excellent. So JD, what about the area of automation, your speciality subject? What's
My
happening
specialty.
there?
We've all heard different things around automation, machine learning, AI. The most recent thing around AI and GPT, where it's going to take over the world. And yes, I mean there are opportunities to be able to use that things, but we do believe some of that needs to be domain specific. And us being the mainframe people experts, how do we take that knowledge that we have, plus what we're learning from our customers, and really start to look and pull data in to look and see how we can predict things that are coming in the future. Mainframe operational intelligence is a key tool that we have as part of Broadcom. We can talk about that a little bit here and a little bit later. We can look at when resource consumption is going to hit its peak, and so we can hopefully remediate that sooner. Aging workforce, the more we can automate things, we understand a lot of technology IT staff is moving upstream into the business value, into the actual application environment. They're called business technologists. They essentially are consuming all this data, but let's send them the data that makes the most sense, and hopefully remediate the problems before it even gets to that level. Um, you know, it all runs down to, how we can be more efficient, but also, things that we're doing currently with contextual insights and really being able to gather all of the items around a problem. In the past, we've had specific alerts pop up, I was in a war room, I guess, several years ago, and I'm like, well, what's that alert? It's read all the time. We just ignore it. Well, that is of no value to the customer. So how do we actually bring that insight that gives me a visual of what's happening in the environment, all with all the pieces together, and be able to drill down from there. We don't want to wake you up at 3 a.m. So if we can predict some of these things, see some of these things, your operations staff who's on can take care of that. We want to make sure you're able to keep that business up and running from a redundancy and resiliency perspective. There's tools that we have that we're running into or bringing into the market that really allow us to do that. I mentioned mainframe operational intelligence, to be able to consume that SMF information and be able to look at trends and hopefully look at the different variables that are associated with that and how it's going to affect something further down the line. Dave can always talk to you more about the mainframe operational intelligence. Matt, mainframe application tuner, the ability to work with our capacity pieces and look where spikes are and actually look down into the application and see where the inefficiencies are in the code. One of the most other pieces we have is from a topological perspective, being able to dynamically gather all the pieces and parts and have an understanding of how these things fit together. Because a lot of organizations, to be able to be more efficient, they got to understand how their business runs. And this goes down to that lowest level, so I can understand the application workflow. And that person that's now been here only 5 years has at least somewhat of a chance of understanding all of those pieces, because the guy that was here for 40 years is, he's off living in Aruba for the rest of his life. And I'll be visiting later this year. But, there's just a lot of different things from an automation perspective. AI can and automation can dive into a lot of these different things. We know that it's coming with the management of the facility, from whether it's power or those different things. But there are elements you can control in that IT environment which help support the future ability of your organization.
Thanks, JD. And you
Yep.
touched on a couple of really, really interesting points. And of course, the breadth of what's available is just absolutely huge. Dave, back over to you for a moment. What about things like succession?
Well, I think in our mainframe space, the KICs and DB2 and MQs those important subsystems will always be there. But things are going to be changing a little bit, and they have been. Like we've seen, Zoe is out in the wild now with command line interfaces. We've got API/ML. That's the mediation layer where we can know what are the APIs that are available on the mainframe, and we're trying to exploit them within our own products like MOI. Mainframe Operational Intelligence is getting SysView data and SMF data to alert you on what's deviating from norm. We've got our observability platform that's also consuming APIs. And then I've even recently been exploiting the Endeavor team build code that allows you to take a Git repository on your workstation and sync it with the USS directory and run a makefile or any other type of build utility on the mainframe. So these are all cool things that are in this space, and they're kind of causing our workforces to kind of merge together. We're going to be having in the future more or less the same workforce for the mainframe guys as the distributed. And in order for us to do that, we need to have the mainframe really adopt these microservices and the containers that I was talking about earlier. And some of the orchestration platforms, which is a fancy way of how do you run the work in production, is a technology that is being coalesced upon is Kubernetes. That might be a term that you haven't heard yet, but I want you to be on the lookout for it. Kubernetes is a way to run all these microservices across a cluster, so you have like almost unlimited compute. So when we get this world, coming together of the mainframe and distributed workforce, we really just need to write it once and figure out the right place for it to run on. And then here at Broadcom, we've done some other things, which we call our Beyond Code initiatives. We've got free education. If you've got a Broadcom product, you have the ability to tap into all of our education. So we please invite you to do that. We have Vitality residency programs where we'll help you train up people on Z. That's because we can't find those Z guys walking down the street as easily as we once could. So we'll help you train those people. And then finally, we've got something I want to highlight called expert change planning, where if you have a big upgrade of a component, or even you're going to upgrade your operating system, we don't care. We'll help you. We'll help you plan it so that your change goes right the first time. You don't have to back it out and start over again. So please engage us with some of these Beyond Code initiatives.
Thanks, Dave. And just to echo some of what you've just said, particularly in that area of education, because there can be a bit of a void or a bit of a gap, with an aging workforce and so on. But we've made so much education available to our customers to bring the new people up to speed, or to allow existing staff to move maybe from one platform to the mainframe space, or perhaps to move from one discipline in the mainframe over to something else. The Vitality program and some of the online learning has really gone down very, very well with a lot of the customers I work with. So it's worth mentioning that again. So thank you for that, Dave. So I guess what I pick up in my customer conversations is that, every business, obviously IT exists to support the business. And every business is absolutely gunning for modernization. That's the prevalent hot topic at the moment. But the thing about modernization means that it's not about scrapping all of that heritage. And I use the word heritage deliberately. It's not legacy. Modernization does not mean scrapping heritage intellectual property. I mean, why would anyone scrap all of that code that's been running on mainframe for decades and decades in favor of the next big thing, whatever that happens to be? Clearly, it needs to be a balance. Dumping it all, throwing it away, binning all that heritage code, that's certainly not a sustainable model. So what I would say is, why not reduce the amount of new coding? Reuse and recycle what you've already got. The old buzzword, reduce, reuse, recycle. And it's a tagline that exists, but it exists for a reason. I look at modernization and I see the value of modernization in place as being a much more sustainable approach for the future. Because, with a little investment in what a lot of customers have right now, like we in the mainframe space can help organizations to meet not only their modernization goals, but also their sustainability goals. I think that's really, really important to work the two together. So what should all of us as a mainframe community be telling our management about the mainframe ecosystem and how that ecosystem is helping to deliver on your sustainability goals? How can we demonstrate that the mainframe is actually not part of the problem, but part of the solution?
So, Kevin, this is Mark. I'd like to address
Mark,
that first.
absolutely.
And realistically, I would start with the low hanging fruit, which is going to be your storage environment. And with the CA1 flexible storage offering, you're going to be able to decrease your footprint, right? Because of the fact that when you start looking at compressing files and encrypting files and taking to the cloud, you're looking at somewhere between 75 and 95% savings just in floor space alone. That doesn't count your heating, your cooling, your electricity, etc. But it's going to help you start somewhere and give you the advantage that you possibly don't have today. And it's an offering that simply upgrades your CA1 solution and you're off and running and you'll get those benefits immediately. So that's where I would really start.
I've got two things. I would tell you to go talk to your management to get them to think about containers for efficiency. And I would start looking at tools like Kubernetes for your workforce and your clustering so that you can have that one workforce or a workforce that's closer to handle both the mainframe and the distributed side of the house. So containers for efficiency and Kubernetes for orchestration.
Very good. And JD?
Automation, automation, automation. Whether that's some type of AI-driven machine learning element, but really trying to take advantage of any of those new pieces that are out there. There are tools that we provide specifically that come as part of our core products. So use an example, you have access to mainframe operational intelligence and giving you the ability to look at and predict future. You don't need to upgrade necessarily for a lot of these different things, but even if it's just taking advantage of some of the hybrid integrations that we have with ServiceNow and things that are driven from out of our ops environment, those things help more efficient and actually allow the workforce to turn things around a lot faster and hopefully only engage in the items that really need a person's attention.
Thank you. So the end is near. Not the end of the world, hopefully, but the end of this session as our time is moving on. So to summarize clearly for all of us on the panel and myself, for everybody tuning in today, the mainframe infrastructure is such an important part of so many companies and so much of the business we do on a day-to-day basis. So we've talked a lot about how the mainframe can help all of us to achieve our IT sustainability goals of meeting the needs of the present while ensuring that future generations can meet their own needs. and everyone involved in the platform, regardless of what industry we work in. We have a part to play, and we need to get more vocal about the value of the mainframe. So I'd like to thank the panelists, my colleagues from Broadcom Mainframe Business Unit, JD Bagnall, Dave Helsley, and Mark Warren. I'd like to thank everyone who has taken the time to attend the Broadcom virtual Lunch and Learn session on sustainability driven by efficiency. And if this was an in-person GSE session, I'd invite you all to continue the discussion at the Broadcom stand in the exhibition hall, or indeed in the bar later this evening, where all of life's challenges can be solved. Unfortunately, this being a virtual session, if the technology works, we will open up to questions on the virtual stage. Thank you all.
So, ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the slight technical hitch there. I don't know what happened. Zoom just stopped sharing my screen for some reason. There's been quite a little bit of feedback in the chat window, comments and questions. Does anybody have anything else they would like to drop into the chat window at the moment? We are running a few minutes late. We've got 5 minutes until the next session. So if you've got any questions, drop them in the window. If not, could I just say for the third time, feedback, if we could get your feedback, that would be very much appreciated. I'd just like to thank the team at Broadcom for putting the time and effort into recording that session for us. Very interesting, and some interesting comments and feedback of which I agree with pretty much everything that was said. So yes, lovely shirt. This is what I wore for the kickoff this morning. I thought I'd be nice and bright and loud. So thank you, everybody. Carry on and enjoying the day. Still some great sessions to go this afternoon. So with that, I'll wrap up this session so we can move on to the next one. Thank you all.